up, Victor?
What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to a YouTube exclusive where we're actually going to talk about some Washington Wizards basketball today. But before we get too deep into this video, you already know what I'm going to say. Be sure to comment, be sure to like, be sure to subscribe. On the road to 3,000 subscribers, and I can't do it without your help. So without further ado, let's get into today's video. So as I said, we're talking about Washington Wizards, because our beloved Washington Wizards, they've been hot and heavy, a team hot and heavy on the rumor mill regarding the NBA draft that is set to start in 4 days. To give you a timestamp for this video, today is Saturday, June the 21st, 2025. And as I just mentioned, we're only 4 days away from the 2025 NBA draft commencing. And the Washington Wizards, they're behind the scenes, shaking and moving as it seems, with a lot of rumors pertaining to the organization. But we're going to focus on the rumor that's picking up the most steam this week, and that's 6'7" wing, number 2 overall prospect coming out of high school, Arius Ace Bailey from the University of Rutgers. It seems as if he may be forcing his way to Washington. Now, I don't want to say it as me reporting, so I don't want any of the aggregators to pick this up or anybody checking this out to tweet out that, you know, WizKids forever is saying that Ace Bailey is going to be a Wizard come Wednesday night. I'm not saying that by any means, but the way that he's handling this pre-draft process and, you know, some of the reports that have come out revolving Ace Bailey and his team over the last couple of days is causing you to perk your ears up a little bit, because it seems as if you know, when the NBA draft lottery happened last month, we didn't seem to have a chance to get a talent like Ace Bailey, when we ended up with the 6th overall pick. But for the second year in a row, it seems as if a top prospect in the draft might be trying their best to get to Washington. Now, last year was Alex Sarr, not wanting to go to the Atlanta Hawks with the first pick, and ultimately wanting to become a Washington Wizard with the 2nd pick. So the fall, if you want to say, if we want to dress it up as that, even though this seems to be a little constructed and construed, the fall is a little steeper than it was last year with Alex Sarr. But when you have competent guys in the organization like a Will Dawkins and like a Michael Winger, these are some of the motives and things that we got to start to get used to with competent front office organizations. These guys coming from the Los Angeles Clippers and the Oklahoma City Thunder organizations, respectfully, they have built, you know, connections with agents, with prospects, and things of that nature where, you know, a lot of these agents trust the Wizards. They trust the Wizards to give their guys a shot. And, you know, we saw it last year with the 3 rookies that we bought in. All of those guys flourished, with Bub and Alex Sarr ultimately making 1st and 2nd first team all rookie respectively. And Kaishan George arguably should have been on that team as well, because they had the green light as rookies. And it seems as if Arius Ace Bailey, 6'7" to 6'9" wing out of the University of Rutgers, is looking for that same green light. The reason that I say 6'7" to 6'9" is because Ace Bailey's height is one of the most polarizing topics, or was one of the most polarizing topics early in the pre-draft process. He was listed as 6'10" by the University of Rutgers during the 2024 freshman season in Big Ten play and things of that nature. But when he measured in at 6'7.5" at the combine in Chicago last month, you know, a lot of people started to raise concerns. And I'm not sure why. We got to remember that 6'7.5", you know, height that they listed was without shoes. And they don't play basketball without shoes. These guys still play basketball with shoes. I know basketball has, you know, revolutionized and evolved over time. They still wear shoes when they're playing basketball. Trust me. So when Ace Bailey is on a basketball court, he's around that 6'8" to 6'9", length, 6'8" to 6'9" height, which is more than enough positional length and positional size. If he's going to be playing the 2 or the 3 respectfully. Now, if you've been tuning into Wiz Kids Forever, and if you listen to any of my podcast episodes before, I wasn't the biggest advocate for drafting Ace Bailey when we had the prospects of potentially getting a top 3 pick. Well, that was before the draft lottery. Because I'm here to say, in 4 days, if Ace Bailey is still on the clock when the Washington Wizards are selecting with the 6th overall pick, we better run to the goddamn podium. I don't know if Usain Bolt would be able to beat me to the podium if Ace Bailey is still on the clock at 6. I don't know. So let's start talking about the rumor and why, this speculation has risen about Ace to DC. We're going to call this episode, now we don't want to title this episode, but, is it Ace in the Hole? Do we have Ace in the Hole? Pause. No diddy. But it started with, ESPN insider Jonathan Givony and his latest mock draft that was dropped a couple of days ago, where he actually was one of the first people in the national media that had Ace Bailey falling outside of the top 5 and falling to the Washington Wizards with the 6th overall pick. And here's his write-up. He says, Bailey's pre-draft workout strategy has perplexed some observers, as he has yet to conduct a single known workout to date, having declined invitations from several teams within his draft range. Sources say Bailey's camp has informed interested teams that they believe he is a top 3 player in the draft, but also seeks a clear pathway to stardom, perhaps feeling comfortable that a team will trade up to get him at 3 or 4 should he drop. Some teams question whether Bailey has received assurances of being selected by a team currently outside the top 5 to a situation deemed more advantageous from a geographical and playing time perspective. Bailey is scheduled to conduct a workout with the 76ers later this week, but it's unclear if he plans to visit any other teams at this stage. Should the Sixers pass on him, he could very well slide to 6 or 7. 2 teams in Washington and New Orleans that are said to be highly intrigued with the 18-year-old's talent, and both are situations in which there appear to be plenty of minutes and shots to be had. So Jonathan Givony just pretty much painted the picture out in this small write-up. As I mentioned, Ace Bailey is looking for somewhere where he thinks he's going to be the star that he thinks that he is. He thinks that he is a star, and he has all the reason to believe that he's a star. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, this is a guy that was the number 2 ranked prospect coming out of high school, only behind Cooper Flagg. And if you were scouring the, high school recruiting ranks, the, NBA draft ranks on Twitter and things of that nature, you knew that some people, I wasn't one of them, but you knew that there was a Cooper Flagg and an Ace Bailey debate at one point. So that shows you the level of talent that Ace Bailey has possessed throughout, his adolescent years as, high school phenom. And while it didn't necessarily translate to the strongest year at the University of Rutgers with them, is it University of Rutgers or Rutgers University? Don't matter right now. I didn't go there. But it resulted in them not making the NCAA tournament. But this is a guy that still averaged 17, 7, and 1 and showed all of, the offensive flashes that made him that number 2, ranked prospect coming out of high school, ranked by ESPN's top 150. The reason that I didn't love him is like that one that I read off in the stat line. And it's, he plays with a little tunnel vision on offense, resulting in, him having stat lines where, he only averaged 1 assist per game over the course of a season. But the reason why I would love Ace Bailey in Washington, especially with the 6th overall pick, is because first, it's tremendous value. It's amazing value because you're getting a top 3 player with the 6th overall pick. I did an episode last week where I talked about the favorites for the Wizards to be selecting at 6. And I didn't even mention Ace Bailey because I didn't think that there was a way that he was going to be available at 6. I thought that if Ace Bailey was going to be a Washington Wizard, we were going to have to trade up, probably potentially get rid of one of the youngest that we fell in love with over the course of this last season, or Corey Kispert to move up into a draft to get our chance at Ace Bailey. But hearing from Jonathan Givony and reading this article, this was like music to my ears. This was like music to my ears because The Wizards need a talent like Ace Bailey. I'm not even going to necessarily say they need Ace Bailey, but they need a talent like Ace Bailey because Ace Bailey gives you the offensive creativity. Even Ace Bailey's biggest knockers and, the guys that, his biggest skeptics and things of that nature, one thing that they'll say and they know is true is that Ace Bailey is a bucket getter. It's a reason why he was getting Tracy McGrady comps, coming out of high school and throughout, his freshman year at Rutgers. It's a reason why he was getting Paul George comps and Brandon Miller comps, coming out of high school and things of that nature, is because he showed that type of bucket getting ability and that type of offensive creativity that the Wizards are in dire need of. While I love our roster right now, I love our youngins, I love how we're developing, and I'm full on for the rebuild. And I love that the direction that we're going in, right? The Wizards roster is very, very international heavy. Now, I'm not knocking that by any means, and I don't know if this is a hot take, but with the Wizards being a heavily international influence roster, they have a roster full of guys with a lot of skill and a lot of fundamentals that play the game the right way. But with that comes a lot of, in my opinion, for lack of a better word, a lot of robotism. They play like robots to an extent, where they don't necessarily have the imagination that, some of the bucket getters of, yesteryear and current days basketball have, right? And it's not necessarily a knock on international players because I'm not a fool. I'll be the first to admit that the international players are dominating the league right now, but there's still a place in basketball for a Carmelo Anthony, a Paul George, a Tracy McGrady, guys that, when it gets late into the shot clock or when you're in dire need of a bucket, you give them the ball and you say, go to work. And you say, go to work. And Ace Bailey is that type of prospect, and that's something that the Wizards are in dire need of. If we can remember, we had 2 16-game losing streaks this past season, right? And in those 16-game losing streaks, it was times when the Wizards were barely cracking 90 points. And I was so baffled. Watching the game because it wasn't like they were playing slower. This was still one of the fastest paced teams in the NBA. And we're playing fast to not get buckets. We were like the ultimate cardio team. We were like a 4x1 track team out there, 4x4 track team, 4x8 track team. The purpose of the game wasn't to get buckets during those losing streaks. It was to just run up and down the court and give our rookies the green light, right? And while I said I'm in full proponent of this rebuild and I love the direction that the roster is heading, you come to this channel for the most raw, uncut, and unfiltered analysis on DC Sports and on our Washington Wizards, and it's my duty to give it to you. They were doing a lot of cardio during those 16-game losing streaks. And a guy like Ace Bailey, that's going to be less likely with him on your roster because he is a bucket getter. You're not going to have too many nights of barely cracking 90 if you compare Ace Bailey with just competent talent. And I think we have more than competent talent. You guys know how I feel about Alex Sarr. I think I'm higher on Alex Sarr than most in the world are on Alex Sarr. I think Alex Sarr has all-star potential. Same thing with Bilal Coulibaly. I'm not as high on him. I think that he didn't take the year 2 leap that I expected him to take, but he's still a hell of a prospect, being only 21 years old. And honestly, a Bilal Coulibaly and Ace Bailey wing pairing piques my interest. A Bilal Coulibaly and Ace Bailey wing tandem piques my interest. Gives me early contending year Boston Celtics vibes with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. You get your offensive bucket getter and Ace Bailey like the Celtics have with Jason Tatum, and I'm not comparing them at prospects, but when it comes to just getting buckets, can't nobody say Jason Tatum doesn't do that. And Ace Bailey does that as well. And then you get your rugged, tough, point of attack defender, strong driver, and slasher in Bilal Coulibaly like the Celtics have in Jaylen Brown. Now, I do want to mention a couple of things because it seems as if there are a couple of conflicting reports coming out regarding Ace coming to DC. One came out today from Raphael Barlo. If you guys aren't familiar with him, he does a lot of work on Yahoo Sports. I actually first noticed him when he was working with Kevin O'Connor on his draft content and things of that nature. But he was paraphrased in this quote by Next Kingdom, where it says that, he was quoted, in this quote by Next Kingdom, where it says, another agent put it this way: I think Ace is trying to get to Washington, New Orleans, or Brooklyn, with Washington as the top choice and Brooklyn close behind. I think those two destinations that his camp has in mind. But then we hear from our guy Troy Halliburton, formerly of Washington Times. I don't know if he's still with Washington Times because it's not in his bio anymore. But you guys know, if you've been tapped into Wizards Twitter, Troy is plugged in, and Troy has had his fair share of scoops and things regarding the Wizards in the last couple of years and things of that nature. And in a response to Wizards Twitter Hall of Famer Damo8186, who's been over the moon since the Jonathan Givony report of or the mock drafting of Ace to DC, where Damo said the Sixers fans are about to be mad like the Hawks fans last year. Don't take it personal, guys. I forgot to mention that, so let me do that now. The reason that Damo tweeted this is because in that mention that Jonathan Givony had talked about Ace having with the Sixers later in the week, Ace ultimately canceled that meeting. Now, take it for what you want to. Take it for what it's worth. You can take it as if he got a promise out from somebody. You can take it as if he thinks that the Sixers are going to waste his time. You can look at it as a positive, or you can look at it as a negative. Especially if you're a Wizards fan, right? Like, this has got to be a positive because it increases his chances of getting to 6. But that's the reason that Damo tweeted that, because that meeting that Ace had scheduled with the Sixers that Givony had talked about earlier in the week, he ultimately canceled that. And he is still yet to work out for any teams. And then Troy Halliburton replied to Damo and said, Wizards fans better get in line. Ace isn't trying to come to DC. He's trying to get to Brooklyn. So that's two contradicting reports from two guys that I believe to be tapped in, which makes it all the more exciting. It makes it all the more exciting for the draft to get here in 4 days. And I can't wait. Now, the Wizard fan in me, with us dropping to 6, I want to believe Raphael Barlo so bad. I want to believe it because I think, as I mentioned, Ace is a talent that's fully worthy of being drafted with the 6th overall pick, and I can see him having an instant impact on this organization. I cannot scoff or turn my nose up to any of the reporting from Troy Halliburton, because as we've seen through Will Dawkins's draft philosophy and draft history over his 2 drafts with our organization, with the Wizards, everybody that he has drafted so far, they have at least brought in for a visit. They've talked about in press conferences how it's important to know the player just as much as it's important to know the person just as much as it is. That's a tongue twister. Just as much as it is to know the player. Excuse me. So I don't know if Will Dawkins or Michael Winger would be turned off by Ace Bailey potentially turning down their meeting if it happened, if they requested a meeting to Ace Bailey. Or this could be a situation where we hear come Wednesday, right after Ace Bailey walks off that stage with his Wizard hat, Jonathan Givony or Malika Andrews comes back. They pan back to the camera and they say that Ace Bailey was Will Dawkins and Michael Winger's guy all along. Matter of fact, they had a secret workout for him just 2 days ago prior to coming up to New York City. Kind of similar to the secret workout that we had, that we heard that Bub Carrington had after we selected him last year. So what do you guys think about Ace Bailey potentially coming to DC? I don't want to get my hopes too high because I'm still a Trey Johnson fan. I'm still an Igor Dimon fan. I'm still a somewhat of a Jeremiah Fears fan. And that's a guy that Troy Halliburton is pushing, that the Wizards are really doing their research and their homework on, even so much as having a surprise workout with Jeremiah Fears at Georgetown, which is in contrast of every other prospect, bringing them into the practice facility in Southeast. So how you guys feel about Ace coming to DC? Who's your favorite prospect? Who y'all want the Wizards to select at 6? I will try to get another video where I'm gonna do a podcast episode where I mention my favorites for the Wizards to be selecting at 18. If we end up selecting at 18, because I told you our names are hot and heavy on the rumor mill. So make sure you stay tapped into the channel. Make sure you stay tapped into Wiz Kids Forever, because you never know. We might be dropping some emergency content any day now with the way that Michael Winger and Will Dawkins moving. And I love it. I love it. It's a new day in DC. And Alex Sarr and Ace Bailey are letting y'all know that. It's clear as day. I'll check in on y'all on the flip side. Peace.